Aloha, good afternoon, everyone. It is 1 p.m. on Wednesday, July 3rd, 2023. I call the meeting of Parks, Enterprise Services, and Culture and the Arts meeting to order. I welcome Vice Chair Okimoto, Councilmember Cordero, Councilmember Tupola, Councilmember Kia Aina, and welcome everyone. Pursuant to Section 22-3.7 Hawaii Revised Statutes, this meeting will be conducted as a remote meeting by interactive conference technology with the following procedures in effect for the meeting. Members of the public will be allowed to provide oral testimony on all items on the agenda when each item is taken up in two ways: in person, in the council chamber, and remotely via video conference or phone. Before testifying, each person shall state their name for the record and will be limited to a 1-minute presentation on each item. All persons who have registered to testify in person will be called upon first. When the timer goes off, please conclude your remarks promptly. Persons who have not registered will be given an opportunity to offer testimony following the registered testifiers. Once in-person testimony has concluded, I will proceed to remote testimony. For persons who are testifying by video conference, when your name is called, please monitor your screen and unmute your audio when prompted. For persons who are testifying by telephone, I will identify you by the last 3 digits of your phone number. When your number is called, please listen for the prompt and unmute and press star 6. Persons who have not registered to testify will be given an opportunity to offer testimony by using the raise hand feature in Zoom to be called upon. Some friendly reminders and tips: video conference from a quiet location if possible. So that's Angela if she's listening. If you're watching the proceedings on Olelo, please mute your television when you're called to testify. When the timer on your screen reaches 0, please conclude your remarks promptly. HRS Section 92-3.7 requires that all votes to at remote meetings be conducted by roll call unless unanimous. Therefore, I will first call objections, and if there are any, I will call for roll call vote. Written testimonies include the testifier's address, email address, and phone number will be available to the public as described on the posted agenda. As a courtesy, please turn off all your cell phones for the duration of this meeting, and thank you. All right, members, item number 1, resolution 20-51, supporting the development of the multi-purpose recreational facility and 50-meter swimming pool at Kahuku District Park or elsewhere within the Kahuku community to serve the needs of the immediate community. This resolution was introduced by Councilmember Wire. Here from the administration, we have Director Laura Thielen. Director? No? Kehau? Deputy Director Kehau Puhu.
Hi, aloha, Committee Chair Tauba and council members. So yes, this reso comes from Councilmember Wire. DPR has no comment at this time.
Any questions for the Deputy Director?
I have a question.
Councilmember Tupola?
Hello, Deputy. Thanks for being here. Is there space for this at the Kahuku District Park?
Aloha, council members. Laura Thielen for the Department of Parks and Recreation. There is an old drawing for the park that does show a recreation building and a swimming pool, but the drawing was done before the current stormwater laws, and it's in the low portion of the park. So there may be space in another area for the park that would have to be examined. And upper portions of the park are currently built out for baseball fields and tennis and other uses.
Yeah, because I think right now at the Kahuku District Park, there's not a actual building, right? It's just the fields.
There is a bit of a rise in one section, and there are 2 old buildings on it. One, for some reason, I think is like a savings and loan or some bank, and the other is utilized by a community association, and also some storage areas and use for park equipment.
And that belongs to DPR now?
Correct.
Oh,
that is part of the park.
Okay, so you guys are using the old savings and loan building for storage?
No, I think there's another entity in the old savings and loan, but that area where those 2 buildings are may be if the city moves forward with development in the area, it would have to take a look at the current stormwater regulations and where there could be development. So it's possible that that location could be suitable for multiple purposes.
Do you know who the landowner is?
It's DPR, it's a city.
So you guys are the landowner, but the building itself is being occupied by another entity?
There's one building that is a multi-purpose building where there's a nonprofit community organization and also used for storage for park stuff. And then there's another older building that I think had acted as some type of bank or savings or loan or something. They're very, very tiny.
But that building is now under you guys' jurisdiction?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I was asking because, you know, the Cuckoo Field always gets flooded, or there's always like some type of like, you know, flooding issue because of where it is, and the park is just adjacent to it.
Well, the park's just at an angle like
Yeah,
this,
it's
so,
just right there next to it. But, you know, I definitely think the community would love something like this. You know, obviously Councilmember Wyer's not here, but I was born in Cuckoo. My in-laws live on that street right there next to the elementary. So I guess my thought would be, if the old drawing is not as current, would step one be towards more of a master plan to determine if this can happen?
I think a lot of times when we talk about master plans, these are multi-year efforts.
Yeah.
And then a lot of times they end up sitting on the shelves. So I'd take a more like practical approach.
Such
is that
as?
if we can decide what it is that needs to go into the area, then we can start taking a look at how would you design and build that under the current, you know, stormwater requirements for that park. We do not have a pool or a gym in between Kaneohe and Wailua. So when we went out and did the mayor's town hall in Laie, there were a lot of people out there talking about the pool. The council members' resolution covers both a pool and a multi-purpose building. You know, I think we'd have to take a look at the area to see what could fit in there under the stormwater regulations. And then I know there's also discussions with AES about a community benefits package and whether there are things that they could move forward with in partnership with the city, you know, that could move a little quicker, and then the city could follow with some other things. So those are all under discussion. Councilman Wyer's resolution, you know, everything is good, and part of it is just going to ultimately come down to, you know, what the city would be able to move forward, you know, both with outside partners and then by itself.
So basically, step one, stormwater requirements. Step two is what could fit in there per the stormwater requirements. Got it. Okay, thank you, Chair. Appreciate it.
Councilmember Cordero.
Thank you, Chair. Hi, Director. Can you elaborate a little bit more of the community benefits package and how that process may occur?
Sure.
Thank you.
I did have a conversation with AES. I have not been part of the earlier discussion on the community benefits packages when the windmills were built. So what I'm going to share may not be accurate or full information. It's just based on a couple conversations that I've had. But my understanding is that when those windmills were being built, there was some discussion by AES about some community benefits packages. And there may have been multiple packages offered to different communities along that coastline. I don't believe the Kahuku Community Association took advantage of that community benefits package because they were, their preference was not to have the windmills built right in their backyard. So I think at this point, my understanding is there is two funding pots. One requires possible some match and may lapse. The second, I believe, does not require a match and does not lapse. And so I think the pot that requires a match is around 1.5 million. Again, I apologize if my numbers are not correct. I don't know. I've not seen anything in writing. And the second pot that doesn't lapse, I believe, is about 2 million.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Any questions, members, to the director? Okay, we'll now proceed to in-person testimony in the council chamber. Do we have any registered testifiers for this item?
Chair, we have none.
Okay. We will move to, let's see,
Chair,
Yes.
I think we have one in person.
Oh, okay. Please state your name for the record. Thank you, sir.
Aloha. I'm Kalani Kalima. I used to be on the staff with Councilwoman Heidi Sunioshi. So that was part of our kuleana, which was reaching out to KCA, working with La Hui Foundation, and trying to figure out what are some of the things that, one was the stormwater guarantee because of the issue of building phase 4 of the Kahuku village. So with everybody working together to try and get to move that water, the other part was to finally provide a place, a gym, other than Kahuku, and a pool. Yeah, so I know that Director Thielen had shared a little bit about the money. I was inside of those meetings. And when you're talking about all of the different community programs that I got them, NOHO had gotten 80,000. LCA, which is the Laie Community Association, they got 20,000 a year. And then as for the monies, from what was shared, you're right. Kahuku didn't necessarily get their fair share because they was trying to protect the health and welfare of their people. That was on the top of the list. With autism and everything else, that flare, that flicker that happens that over that area was a huge, huge issue. And now that AES is already had already gone into all of these talks with the different programs, Kahuku would like their fair share, and they want that pool, and they deserve that. They're going through everything else. Yeah, and I believe at that time when we was meeting, the number was 2.5 million. Malo.
Any questions for the testifier? Thank you. Okay, let's move the proceeding to remote testimony. Do we have any registered remote testifiers for this item?
Chair, yes, we do.
Okay, when I call your name or last 3 digits of your phone numbers, please follow the prompt to unmute and begin by stating your name. Let's go to Narissa Niu first, followed by Asai Gilman.
Chair, the first 2 testifiers are not logged on.
Okay, we'll move on to former Senator Gil Reviere, followed by Sunny Unga.
Aloha. Hi, my name is, thank you, Chair. Thank you, members, for hearing this resolution. My name is Gil Riviere, and I am in strong support of this resolution. Imagine a community that has to drive an hour to use a pool or a gymnasium. Imagine that. There's really only one community on this island that has to endure that. And I spoke to Leah Albert, who was a former complex area supervisor for this, the high school. She was former principal, and before that, she was a former vice principal back in the 1980s when the land was dedicated to build the district park. It was also dedicated to build the elementary school. And at that time, there was a clear commitment. If the high school were to give the land for the park and for the elementary school, that a swimming pool would be built. And now 40 years later, there's no swimming pool. So the time is overdue. The money that AES has pledged is $2.5 million outright, and there is a $1.5 million matching pot. So there's a total on the table of $4 million with a match of $1.5 million from the city or some other entity. So this is a real game changer. The time has come. There is space on the property, as discussed. There's a couple old buildings that can be redesigned. There's some vacant parking area that can be redesigned. There's a little bit of land. It can be done. And finally, there is money that was in the budget from last year for design of this. So I'm in strong support of this. Please move this resolution forward, and let's make it happen for the people of Kahuku. Mahalo.
Thank you, sir. Any questions for the testifier? Okay, moving on to Sunny Unga, followed by Iron Seeley. .
Aloha, Chair. My apologies. I can't figure out how to get my video on my phone, but this is Sunny Unga. And I actually, before you start the timer, I submitted two testimonies, one personal testimony to testify as an individual, and then another one for Kahuku Community Association. May I take the time to testify for my individual part and then also on behalf of KCA, please?
That's fine. Go ahead.
Oh, okay. So on behalf of KCA, I would like to urge and request the council to support the development of a multi-purpose recreational facility with an indoor gym as well as a pool. We stand by our written testimony, and KCA is here eager to help and move this forward. We are excited to have the mayor's support, as Laura Thielen had mentioned in the mayor's town hall meeting on the 20th. So we have a task force that we created to help. So please let us know. We are also meeting with Sandra Larson to work things out. So we are happy to be part of this process to help in any way that we can, and we're open for questions as well. As far as my personal testimony, when I used to live in town and around Punahou area, and we had access to a handful of public pools within 10-15 minutes of where we live. And three of my daughters, starting from 18 months old, we took advantage of the free swimming lessons offered by the Department of Parks and Rec, and it was a great, wonderful resource. But when we moved to Kahuku in 2018, we found out that there was no options nearby because there was no public pool in our community or nearby. So while my friends in town were able to continue to enjoy swimming lessons, we were left with no option and had to find other alternatives, which was extremely difficult. And so I just wanted to share my experience because it's very unfortunate that we have to have these challenges and working so hard to find opportunities that are easily accessible in town. So, I hope that, our council members can really help provide these facilities for the Ko'olauloa and North Shore communities. And yes, thank you very much.
No, thank you. Any questions for our testifier? Okay, thank you. Moving on to Iron Silly, followed by Chun James.
Chair, Iron is not logged on.
Okay, Ms. James, are you online?
Aloha, can you hear me?
I can. Thank you.
Yay. Aloha, everybody. I just wanted to drop in real quickly in support of this. All communities should enjoy basic facilities like recreational centers and swimming pools. I know that some of the other areas in town have much more facilities. And so this is a long time coming, and it's going the right direction. So I certainly support this and ask for your support as well. And also special mahalo to Kalani, Kalima, for trying to explain a little bit about the AES money. It is a long story. It's the long institutional stories. 200 people were arrested for going against the turbines for good reasons. There were a lot of rules and procedures that were violated by a lot of government groups. And so for that reason, the Kahuku Community Association did not want to be sold out just in terms of so-called community benefits. And LCA did receive $20,000, but we feel like it was unethical and it was blood money because the turbines are not even in Laie. So there's a lot of story to that, but again, just it's time for the city to start focusing on rural communities and providing them the benefits like it is providing other people elsewhere in Oahu. Mahalo.
Thank you. That was the last registered testifier. Is there anyone else remotely who wishes to testify on this item? Please use your hand raise feature now to be called upon.
Chair, we have Angela Young.
No way. All right, Angela.
Yes, Chair, I was listening, by the way. Thank you for the helpful hints. Okay, so testifying in support, I have been at almost every town hall meeting as an avid fan of the city's efforts, and also including the meeting in Laie. I took a trip to that faraway district, and I can attest as a witness to the requests. The people from the community were requesting a pool. I think it was for water polo. So I'm going to read from sportsfacilities.com to get a good sense of the standards when building. And multi-purpose means versatility. In theory, every space in the facility should have multiple uses, and sustainability in the design should be of consideration. There are ways to reduce energy consumption and waste. Seniors will need reasonable accommodations, and the disabled will require accessibility as per the ADA. And while children may require ergonomically correct facilities such as entertainment options and playgrounds. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Is there anyone else?
Chair, there are none.
Okay, members, we are in discussion. Okay, so the chair recommends the resolution 23-51 be reported out for adoption. Any objections? Any reservations? Hearing none, so ordered. Okay, moving on to item number 2. Members, with your indulgence, what I would like to do is take up items 2, 3, and 4 together since they all relate to gifts to the city for the Mayor's Memorial Day event to be held at the National Memorial Cemetery of the Pacific on May 29th, 2023. I would then read each item individually to allow for the public testimony and taking of the vote. Is that okay? Okay, thank you. So item number 2 is resolution 23-64, accepting the gift to the city from Aloha Air Cargo, valued at $2,500 of in-kind air freight shipping of flowers and lei from the neighbor islands to Honolulu to support the making and the collection of 38,000 lei that will adorn the graves of our service members buried at the National Memorial Cemetery of the Pacific as part of the mayor's event at the cemetery. Item number 3, resolution -2369, accepting a gift to the city from Rengo Package Incorporated, valued at $1,941.42 of small and large boxes that will be used to hold the flowers and the lei that are collected for the mayor's event. And item number 4, resolution 23-63, accepting a gift to the city from Matson Navigation Company, valued at $760 of the 5-day use of 2 refrigerated containers, cases, and motor generators in order to store the lei at the cemetery for the mayor's event. Here, on behalf of the administration, is Deputy Director Kehao Pu.
Mahalo, Chair Toba, and council members. So yes, DPR is very appreciative of the support of these 3 businesses: Aloha Air Cargo to help us transport donated lei and flowers from the neighbor islands, Rengo Packaging to help us store lei, not just that are donated, but also that are sown through our Soale events. And then finally, Matson for allowing us to store and refrigerate our lei, our flowers, and also wreaths. So we respectfully ask the council to approve these resolutions.
Thank you. Any questions for the Deputy Director? Okay, thank you, members. I will now take public testimony and thereafter the vote on each item. Item number 2, resolution 23-64, gift to the city from Aloha Air Cargo, valued at $2,500 or in-kind air freight shipping of flowers and lei from the neighbor islands to Honolulu. Is there any in-person testimony and anyone registered to testify on this item?
Chair, there are none.
Okay. Are there any remote testimony?
Chair, we have one, Angela Young.
Okay. I think we have in person, sorry. Aloha, please state your first and your last name.
Aloha, my name is Charlene Kalama. I just saw this. So, in regards to only the National Memorial Cemetery up at Punch Bowl, right? What about Kaneohe, the overflow that had to go into Kaneohe? Is that also included? No. Okay. May I ask why? There's still our military that's being not allowed to be up at Punch Bowl because there's no space, so they're in Kaneohe. Mahalo. Just my concern. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, going back to our register. Angela, we can go straight to Angela? Yeah? Angela, go ahead.
Aloha, Chair, Vice Chair, and the committee. Angela Melody Young testifying on behalf of CARES. So now celebrated on the last Monday of May, the first form of Memorial Day in the United States began after the Civil War as a day to honor and remember those who made the final full measure of devotion while serving the armed forces. Following World War II, Puawina, the Punch Bowl crater, was designated the National Memorial Cemetery of the Pacific, with the first Memorial Day celebration held within the crater in 1949. So to answer that lady's question, I think it's just because it was designated as the National Memorial. Yeah, and so since that first humble ceremony, City and County of Honolulu has been honored to work with numerous veterans, community, and educational organizations to help facilitate this time-honored tradition. Thank you.
Thank you, Angela. I think that was our last registered testifier on this item. Is there anyone else remotely who wishes to testify on the item?
Chair, there are none.
Okay, members, I guess we are in discussion. Okay, the chair recommends that resolution 23-64 be reported out for adoption. Any objections? Any reservations? Hearing none, so ordered. Okay, moving on to item number 3, resolution 20-69, a gift to the city from Ringo Package valued at $1,941 and 42 cents of small and large boxes to hold the flowers and leis. Do we have any registered in-person testifiers for this?
Chair, there are none.
Okay. Are there any in-person testifiers? No, it's supposed to be in-person first. Or anyone wishes to testify on this item? Okay. So no one registered to testify?
Chair, there are
remotely?
none.
Okay. Members, we are in discussion. Okay. The chair recommends that resolution 23-69 be reported out for adoption. Any objections? Any reservations? Hearing none, so ordered. Okay. Item number 4, resolution -23-63, a gift to the city from Matson Navigation Company valued at $760 for 5-day use of 2 refrigerated containers and motor generators to store the lei. Do we have any registered in-person testifiers for this item?
Chair, there are none.
Okay, is there anyone who wishes to testify on this item in the chamber? Okay. We'll now proceed to remote testimony. Do we have any registered remote testifiers for this item?
Chair, there are none, but we have Angela Young.
Okay. Go ahead, Angela.
Thank you, Chair. Angela Melody Young, testifying in strong support on behalf of CARES for the So'olei for Memorial Day event. And I think the event will serve as a reminder that our gratitude is due every day as we continue to preserve and enhance the principles we hold to be righteous as it relates to veterans. And also to address the previous testifier about the Kaneohe sites. There are sites for lei sewing, so I think this is a good solution. On May 26th, Kailua District Park, and then also May 26th, Ho'omaluhia Botanical Gardens, there's going to be a lace sewing site that the Kaneohe community can participate in. So, yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Angela. I think that was our last registered testifier. Is there anyone else?
Chair, there are none.
Okay, members, we are in discussion. Is there any questions? I actually have one for Kehao. Would you like to maybe address or the question of Kaneohe?
Yeah, sure. So while we don't have so there are a lot of Memorial Day ceremonies that happen on that day, military, the state, as well as the city. As Angela shared, we have been doing the punch bowl ceremony since 1949 and have been committed to doing it every year. And the mayor at the time committed to providing a fresh lei for every grave there at Pu'awaina because they brought home two veterans who were killed in action and there wasn't anything for them. But I want to let you know that, so we have to try and get 38,000 plus graves there at Pu'awaina at Punch Bowl. At Kaneohe, though, Hawaiian Memorial, the Girl Scouts actually are the ones who have taken the lead in providing lei. So there are fresh lei that are decorating the graves, that are decorated, that are used to decorate the graves there at Hawaiian Memorial at Kaneohe. So they take the lead on that. We also have one park that supports Schofield, so we do lei sewing for them. But it's a big undertaking. We do try to donate any overage that we have and give that to the Girl Scouts for Hawaiian Memorial. But I'm gonna be honest, we have a hard time getting our 38,000. So we do encourage the public to come out, donate to the Girl Scouts too, again, who are in charge of Kaneohe Memorial. Come donate, come sew, however you wanna kokua.
I know there's a lot of seniors that do it, but we can get more than just seniors. Young, vibrant teenagers can come out and help sew leis. So if you're watching this, please come out and volunteer. Okay, any questions for the Deputy Director? Okay, the chair recommends that Resolution 23-63 be reported out for adoption. Any objections? Any reservations? Hearing none, so ordered. Okay, moving on to item number 5, discussion on proposed amendments by the Department of Parks and Recreation included in Bill 19, 2023, as it pertains to recreational stops. Members, as I mentioned in the last month's meeting, discussion on Bill 19, 2023 would take place over the course of several meetings to encourage community engagement and consider the needs and concerns of the community. At our April 5th meeting, we focused on recreational stops and the proposed amendments included in Bill 19 as it pertains to recreational stops. Today, we'll continue to explore that topic of discussion and the sections and provisions as posted on the agenda, okay? In the interest of efficiency, the chair requests that you restrict your remarks to recreational stops for this meeting. For your information, the Department of Parks and Recreation has provided testimony and additional data for today's discussion as Departmental Communication 290, which is also available online. So from the administration, Director Laura Thielen.
Thank you, Chair Tolba, members of the committee. Laura Thielen on behalf of the Department of Parks and Recreation. Because we have some people who are joining us this month who may not have been here last month, what I'd like to do is begin with a quick overview of why we have Bill 19, what Bill 19 tries to do, and then go into the additional information that we're providing to help inform the discussion on recreational stops today. So first for the overview, when Mayor Blangiardi was elected, he did, I think it was around the first year that he came into office, sign off on the legislation that restricted certain types of commercial use from going into Hunanu Niho in Waimanalo. But at that time of the bill signing ceremony, the mayor said that his intent was to move forward with an island-wide approach to commercial uses in parks, because he did not support a park-by-park approach or a ban, but he did want to acknowledge the work of the community members and the importance of parks as being primarily for recreational purposes, not for commercial purposes. So the mayor then asked our department to put together a draft bill, an island-wide approach towards commercial uses in parks. And it is a little ironic that I'm the director of the department and was asked to do this, because I was a member of the Kailua community when about 8 to 10 years ago, we appeared in front of the council and asked for some legislation restricting commercial use in that park. And let me explain, in Kailua, what was going on in that time is there was meeting after meeting where the community approached the Parks Department and said the commercial uses that were going on in that park had gotten out of control. Kailua had become kind of the first example of when social media takes a location in Hawaii and makes it a must-go-to place, and it was just getting flooded with tourists, that all of a sudden it was like, the number 2 stop after Waikiki to go there. And time after time, the Parks Department refused to propose any type of administrative rule or legislation that would restrict or manage the commercial uses that were taking place in that park. And in the absence of any type of management initiative, the council became very frustrated and passed the first ban. What happened then was, in hindsight, a little bit predictable. A lot of those commercial activities then pivoted over to Waimanalo. The Waimanalo community, which I was then a part of during that discussion, decided that after much discussion, they didn't want to go for a total ban on commercial activities, because they enjoyed having bouncy houses. They had the Gabi Pahinui Festival, the canoe regattas. All of those had some forms of maybe sales of manapua, plate lunch, different things like that. And so they crafted different legislation from Kailua, and ultimately that's what passed there. Now, the agreement at that time in the community was what was then known as Sherwood Forest, and now Hunananiho, was kind of the one area where the commercial activity and the tours could go to. Again, in hindsight, predictably, when all the tourism activity shifted there became some pushback in that area and wanting to respect some types of limits. And then we also saw the same thing happening in the North Shore around both tour buses as well as instruction, commercial instruction. So what we did when we were taking a look at coming up with an island-wide approach is to say that, we want to be fair to all communities. We don't want to push problems from one community to the next. We don't want social media to then kind of explode a new area that's the must-go-to area and then find that we're trying to catch up, when it's getting inundated with tourists. And we want to find a balance that says, what could we accept and manage and embrace the management obligation from the department as well as the city, to be able to come up with something that works for communities and for the tourism industry. So we have had some community members say to me, why not just ban it everywhere? Parks could be just solely recreational purposes and not other uses. And that certainly is something that people can consider. But I think also tourism is a big part of our economy. It supports a lot of families. And what we haven't tried is actually managing it at our shoreline parks. We have managed it in other places. Recently in Hanauma Bay, we did put a cap on the number of people who could come into the bay. That was done because of COVID, but we've kept that cap. And it's worked in that area. You see at the state, they've put in caps and limits and are trying to embrace management in some of the state park areas, and we think it's worthwhile making an effort here. I have had some people in the tourism industry say, why do we have to manage it at all? We didn't manage it before. And my response to that is, I grew up here. The number of tourists, it used to be, I don't know, when I was a kid, maybe about 1 million a year. By the time I got to be a teenager or young adult, we were up to about 7 million. We stayed between 7 to 8 million a year for about 14 years. Why? Because that was the number of tourists that the hotel rooms could accommodate. And then what happened was the legislature authorized timeshares. All of a sudden, condominium rooms could be turned into hotel rooms. So we crept up to about 8.5 million. Then the internet, Airbnb, and VRBO and vacation rental and everything else started. Boom, we were up to 10.5 million. COVID hit, we went down, but we're now back up to about 10 million, and the Asia market hasn't yet returned. So the reason that I think we need some form of management is tourism is not like it was, and it never will be again. And social media has changed things because tourists no longer stay in resort areas. Even if they're staying in a hotel, they're going online, they're looking at hikes, they're looking at surf schools, they're looking at other things. So we've come up with Bill 19, and what we tried to do in Bill 19 is take a look at the 16 communities that have what I call a special legislation. They have additional laws. And we tried to say, what were the things that worked at managing the commercial activities in these communities? What were the nuances in the laws that allowed the good things to happen that communities wanted? And then we tried to put that into Bill 19. Bill 19 is just a starting point for discussion, and we are listening to the testimony, as are you. We're providing additional data. We'll continue to listen, and then we'll come forward with amendments to refine the approach. So we're not fighting to keep what is in Bill 19. I'm just explaining the starting point for the discussion. We broke commercial activities into 3 different categories. The first is the tour bus stop. And that is the easiest because you either have a bus there or you don't. So we're tackling that first. The second category, which we'll probably tackle next, is the commercial instruction. A lot of it takes place in our shoreline parks and our beach areas, but some of it takes place in our inland parks too. You have surf schools, scuba schools. You have some people going to our pools, doing swimming lessons for a fee. You've got other people that are doing tennis lessons for a fee. So the second part is commercial instruction. The third part is commercial film, which may be the TV industry film, but also the wedding photography, the graduation pictures, the family photos. But in order to just kind of help focus the discussion, we've worked with the committee to say, let's tackle this one topic at a time. So we started talking about recreational stops last month. The Bill 19 starting point for the discussion, the things that we took from the existing laws to apply to an island-wide approach. First of all, what was happening before Kailua is there is in the current DPR rules and practice a 15-minute grace period. Any bus can go into a park, and if they're there for 15 minutes or less, it does not require a permit. The grace period does not work, because what happens is by the time you call a police officer and you have to come there and they take a look, and the bus may say, oh, we just got here, we're about to leave. But they may have been there for 20 minutes, 40 minutes, an hour. You just don't know. So in Bill 19, we copied what was in the legislation for Kailua, and we said no grace period. Any bus going into a shoreline park requires a permit, regardless of whether they're there for a minute or an hour. It doesn't matter. The second thing we took from the Kailua legislation that worked is the enforcement, because most people complain is like, okay, you have a rule, but it's not enforced. What they did in that legislation is they, instead of making it a petty misdemeanor offense, and for those of you who don't work in criminal justice, if it's a petty misdemeanor offense, you have to take the person to criminal court, prove every element of that offense beyond a reasonable doubt. It requires the police to write up a report that proves beyond a reasonable doubt every offense. It requires a prosecutor to take that case to court. In Kailua, what they said in that legislation is, let's just make it a parking fine. Under the existing ordinance for parks departments, you can have parking citations which do not require going to court unless somebody wants to fight it. So it's basically a decriminalized offense. And because it's a petty misdemeanor, the maximum fine is $500. So what we did in Bill 19 is said any violation for any recreational stop, you've gone to a park that you don't have a permit for. You've gone to a park on a day that your permit doesn't cover. You have gone to a park, and even though you don't have a permit, you don't have it posted in the windshield of your bus. Any one of those things is a parking citation subject to a fine. And if you have 2 or more offenses within a 2-month period, you can also get the fine and the petty misdemeanor, which would be up to 30 days imprisonment. In order to have that petty misdemeanor and the 30 days imprisonment, you would have to go through that criminal court process. You would have to take the person to court, prove beyond a reasonable doubt that it had happened, that they had the offense 2 times, in the prior 2 months. So it's not something that's automatic like the citation, but it does say, you can't just make this a cost of business and just pay $500 each time you come in here, because ultimately you may be subject to the criminal fine as well. The other thing that we did is we said, this is a lot of the limitations. We need to have limits on when the beach parks and the shoreline parks are the most congested. So we said we would limit tour bus stops or recreational stops to Monday to Friday, 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. No recreational stops on the weekends, no recreational stops on a state or federal holiday. We also looked at areas that recreational stops are not appropriate. Beach right-of-ways. That was in some of the earlier legislation because people were bringing tour buses to beach right-of-ways. Every beach right-of-way tends to be on a residential street, in a residential community, not at a park. So in Bill 19, we've said no recreational stops at any beach right-of-way, any of the 89 beach right-of-ways that the city has around the island. The other thing we looked at is recreational stops in unimproved parks. Unimproved parks are areas where we have not invested any capital improvement or infrastructure. We do not have paved parking. We do not have comfort stations. We do not maintain these areas on a regular basis, so they may contain hidden hazards. So those are not appropriate for recreational stops. So Bill 19 says no recreational stops at any unimproved park. We looked at the size of buses and felt that the coach-sized buses are not really appropriate in our beach parks. So we limited the size of the bus to 25 seats or less. And again, we were looking at enforcement because, we were saying if the bus is that size, it's something that in enforcement you can go in and take a look and you can count the number of seats and you can easily say this is a violation. And then the last is we said we would want to limit the number of buses going into a park. And the limits that we put in here, I will say just up front, as we discussed last month, it is somewhat arbitrary. It was to start the discussion, but no more than 3 buses at a time and no more than 10 buses at a day at any given park. So a lot of the discussion we had last week is why the 310 and what are some other characteristics that you would look at shoreline parks to determine whether a recreation stop would be appropriate or not appropriate. So that's where I want to get into the information that we've provided today in the testimony. Nate Sirota, who is our public information officer, is going to pull some information up on the screen. I'm going to walk folks through how to use it because we put this online so people can pull it up themselves. Some of the maps we're going to look at, they're online. You can zoom in to different regions in different parks. And on the spreadsheet, you can sort it by different categories if you want to. So I'm going to start with the spreadsheet and explain this so that you can use it and if you want to afterwards, and then also for questions. But what we've listed here in the tab at the bottom, it says City Shoreline Park. This is every one of the shoreline parks that are in the Department of Parks and Recreation inventory. Last month, they said we had 67 shoreline parks. When we went back and took a look at this and we started to put this together, we realized we had missed putting one of the parks into our inventory. So we have 68 shoreline parks listed here. Some of these shoreline parks, they'll stretch along a certain area of coastline, and so locals will know them by different names. So for instance, Kalanianaole Beach Park, you'll have sections that are known as Black Rocks or Depots or Zablon. But for the Department of Parks and Recreation, it's a single park that's managed within our department for administrative purposes. So we've listed it up here on the spreadsheet as a single one park, but we've put down the sub-park names. So if you're looking for park names, you'll be able to see it. You'll also see Sandy Beach Park. Halona Blowhole is part of that park for our administrative purposes. The other thing I want to go over, go back up to the top, okay, is just so you can understand, again, how we've organized this for administrative purposes. The first section that you'll see under the shoreline park is in yellow. And you'll see the name of the park is the first column, and all the yellow parks are in alphabetical order. And the second column, you'll see it says Park District. The Department of Parks and Recreation has broken up the island of Oahu into 5 administrative districts. So this is just our internal organization. We have different district managers for each district. So that's why we're looking at it this way. We have different grounds maintenance for the districts and things like that. District 1 runs from Kaiwi coastline up to McCully. So you'll see that it has about 18 shoreline parks in it. The blue row is District 2. That runs from Punahou to Aiea. This was a little bit of an eye-opener for me because I grew up on the windward side when I realized that District 2, again, Punahou to Aiea, there are only 4 city shoreline parks, not a whole lot. These tend to be the big regional parks, Ala Moana, Kaka'ako, Ke'ehi Lagoon. Kewalo Basin is a little bit of an outlier. But you can see that urban Honolulu shoreline doesn't have a lot of beach access or parks. And then once you start to get over into Pearl Harbor, there really is limited to no ocean access. The pinkish color is our District 3. That is Ewa and Leeward Coast. And you'll start to see larger size parks along this area. And then the green down below is our District 4. I call this the District of Chile. If you guys have ever looked at the continent of South America and you see that the country of Chile runs from the tip of South America down, from the top to the very bottom, and it's bounded by the Andes Mountain, and it's this really long, skinny country. District 4 runs from Makapu'u all the way up the windward coast, wraps around the corner, runs all the way along the north shore to Dillingham Park, which is the last park. That has the largest number of beaches, and that's where a lot of the Circle Island tours will be going. District 5, the sole beach park in that orange color in the bottom, is our administrative district that is Mililani, Pearl City, but it also includes Waipio Soccer Complex, and so it just touches down to that one single Neil Blaisdell shoreline park. What you'll also see is we put in the number of comfort stations by parks, the number of paved parking stalls. So we talked about not including unimproved beach parks, that those are not appropriate for recreational stops. We also do not want to include parks that do have improvements in sub-paved parking areas. We do not want to include unpaved parking areas for tour bus stops because the weight of the vehicles will add to the erosion in these shoreline areas over time, and we would recommend restricting them to paved parking areas. So we were looking at the number of paved parking stalls and then the size of the park in acreage. What we did then is we started to kind of slice and dice the parks based on this data. So we began with taking a look at parking stalls. Nate's now going to pull up the parks that have, based on the number of parking stalls, which parks have 20 or more paved parking stalls. And here on the spreadsheet, you can look at that tab, you can see the names of the parks, but Nate, if you also want to pull up the map. We also have maps of the islands which show the location, because you can see, he's sorted this area by the number of parking stalls going from lowest to highest. But when you pull up the maps, and again, these are online, and you can zoom in and out of the different area, you can see the location of the different parks with 20 or more paved parking stalls. Another area that we started to sort with on the spreadsheet and then have an attached map is 19 or fewer paved parking stalls. I don't know if you can hop over to that. So we're having both the, so you can see the parks are going to fall into one or the other. All 68 parks should be in one or the other of the two spreadsheets. The next thing we looked at is comfort stations. Which of these shoreline parks have comfort stations and which do not? Many of the recreational stops, people are going to want to take a bathroom break. And so it seemed to us that, you may want to take parks with comfort stations and look at them, and maybe take off of consideration parks with no comfort stations. So here's the ones with. Nate, if you want to show the ones with no comfort stations. Not a huge number, but about 19 of them in the shoreline parks have none. And then again, we have maps associated with that. The next thing we looked at was the size of the park. So this is a listing on the spreadsheet of parks that are more 10 acres or greater in size. And then the next tab shows parks that are 10 acres or less in size. If you want to sort by different size categories, you can go back to the original spreadsheet that lists all 68 parks. You can go to the column with size. You can ask it to sort from smallest to largest, and then you can see the size of all the parks. You can do the same thing. You can sort it along the parking, and you can sort it along the comfort stations if you want. What I'd like to do is go to the spreadsheet, the map. We put together a map, and there is also a tab on the spreadsheet column that will show the parks that have 20 or more paved parking stalls. They have a comfort station or more than one comfort station, and they are 10 acres or greater in size. So you can see right now this map is showing all 68 shoreline parks, and then once Nate has clicked on this, you can see the limitation on the number of parks that are left when you look only at the category where it has all of those elements in it. I think, again, we want to leave time for people to share their thoughts on this, ask additional questions. But the point that we're trying to raise with the data is we would recommend taking a look at shoreline parks and trying to carve out where recreational stops may be acceptable. And if they are acceptable, what are the limitations that we should place on them as far as numbers, time? I know we heard things in testimony like at Kokolo Leo about the buses beeping when they back up. We can take a look at things like I went out to Kokolo Leo and looked at it. There are 2 entrances to that parking lot. It's possible to have things, if we end up in a situation where we say we want to have managed access in an area, that we would have one area for buses to enter and one to exit. Somebody talked about having painted marked stalls for buses where if they could drive in and park, where they wouldn't have to reverse and be able to drive straight out again. There are ways that we can manage the activities that are here to reduce the impacts on the communities. The department wants to, at this point, say that we will embrace the management. We are working with the council also on a park ranger project where we could do dual enforcement through both rangers as well as HPD. We are trying in Bill 19 as best we can to find simplified ways to do enforcement, like the civil penalties, where it doesn't require going to court and actually making a full-on criminal case, and better ways to manage to see if we can tackle it, to be able to respect the residents' primary recreational use in the areas, but to also allow some limited and managed access for the recreational stops. The last thing I want to say is there was a question raised at the last meeting about whether we could look at parks with residences next to them as a category. And we did take a look, worked with our staff on that. And I'd have to say that just given the configuration of Oahu, we have a very mountainous interior. Our coastal lands are our developed areas. So pretty much, the vast majority of our beach parks, our shoreline parks, are either next to residences, across the street from residences, or reached by going through residential areas. So we didn't see that that was really an area to be able to work. But we do think that in Bill 19, we had proposed recreational stops Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. In talking with the tour industry, we understand that most of these tours finish well before 5, and a lot of them, because they're picking people up in Waikiki, will start after 8 a.m. So we think that there is a possibility of doing abbreviated hours for recreational stops, which would have the benefit of taking buses out of these areas during rush hour when people are trying to get kids to school, or coming back to their homes after dropping Keiki off, or going to work or the like. And that's something that could be very workable. I don't have hours proposed for you now, but we would invite the industry to weigh in, because we think it would be helpful, and it's something that they would definitely have information that would be helpful for the discussion. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions that people may have about the information, and then also just listen to the testimony, and if there's subsequent questions, answer those as well.
Thank you, Director. Before I ask the members if they have any questions to the Director, if you want information on all the stuff that we just looked at, it's bit.ly/bill19map for the general public if you want to take a look what we just saw. Okay, members, do we have any questions for the Director? Councilmember Tupola.
Thank you, Chair. Director, thank you so much for all this work. Honestly, when I looked at this, I was like, wow, this helps so much. We can even do a similar map to what ENV did when they were siting the landfill, laying it over one another so we can see what's left, what's available. So I didn't do it for all the beach parks, but I did it for the ones in on the west side. So really, if we take out all the beach parks that have fewer than 19 stalls, don't have comfort stations, and let's see, are less than 10 acres, I'm actually only left with five possible parks that could be considered. Now, of the 5, 3 of them are kind of like Kalailoa, Eva area, Barbers Point Park, which I don't think anybody wants to go out there, but hey, if they want to, that's cool. It's at the end of Campo Industrial. Kapapapuhi, which, is its own very beautiful park, and then Pu'uloa, which Pu'uloa does have an in and out. I mean, it definitely is right next to homes. I'm not so sure how people think about that, but the ones on my side would be Kahe, Kalana Anaole. So I guess my question for those 2 is because there's only one driveway in. So at Kahe, if we're talking about like the one across the power plant, not tracks, but the one right across, there's only one way to get in. So yes, there are more stalls. It's heavily utilized by scuba divers because of the electric plant, the water is very warm there. So there's just wildlife everywhere. I guess for that one and Kalanaanaole Beach Park, all of the interior ones of Kalanaanaole Beach Park, there's no way out. So when we had a water main break on Farrington Highway and they tried to shuttle buses through Kalanaanaole Beach Park, it couldn't make the right turn around the tree to get out. So I guess that would be my other concern, right, is perhaps it's big enough, perhaps it has enough stalls, but for those two beach parks in specific, once you get in, you can't come back out. And I know you guys kind of limited the size of the bus. So I guess that would be something to consider. And then also, I really liked Kapua's suggestion about having a marked stall for it, just so that even if you do have a placard, that there still has to be an open stall for you to use that placard so that you're not taking over 5 or 6 other stalls, right? So in the event that there is that consideration, okay, is there an in and out for this place for a larger vehicle to come in and out of here? And then are we willing to take away parking stalls to make an actual area where a placard and a tour bus can operate? So those are just 2 questions I had in my mind. And then as well on page 18, C number 4, it says 10 vehicles per day. I was thinking, obviously in some of these areas, if there's not that many parking stalls, meaning like 10 vehicles per day, there's not enough separated parking stalls for that, if that number would be changed. And then of course on page 19, number 9, that would have to be changed too, because it goes through the violations for that, and on page 15 as well. So just some thoughts, because that was the only one that I had really had. Was I do think that having a place for them to go, as opposed to just holding up the parking lot because there's no open parking space, blocking things, is having a place with a corresponding placard would help to maybe even make it work a little bit more. And then seeing as though we have very few that even fit that category once everything is eliminated, then kind of taking those to neighborhood board or making it more down to the grassroots level and kind of weeding out other possible things we think for those ones that are in our district. But yeah, I just want to say thank you for the work you guys did. I really, it's one step closer to helping us visualize what this could look like, you know, instead of hypothetical everything. So I think moving forward for the recreational stops, if we could even get farther, like, and I know we're not going to amend this bill till like maybe the end of the year, but seeing as though you guys have given us a lot, like I wanted to see which parts of these are we going to start to say, okay, yeah, we're all in agreement. No comfort station, no stops. Great, okay, all of these are out. Okay, not enough stalls, no stops. Okay, all of these are out. So however the chair wants to do it, or yourself, director, I just wanted to see, these are great suggestions. Are we gonna start to whittle down the bill or just kind of wait till the end?
Okay.
No, director, that's what I'm hoping. I'm hoping that we can have this kind of discussion and, as you say, whittle through the whole thing and find good solutions, director.
No, exactly. I think that's the point, is to put the information out there, listen to the testimony, the suggestions that have come up. There's a lot of good suggestions that have come up. There are many more good suggestions that can come up. We are not saying that this has to be the way to regulate it. This is food for thought, and we want people to be looking at this and saying, okay, what would be acceptable? How should we do it? If I don't like this, you know, what would I pick? And so this is the purpose of making this data public, that people can take a look at it. And people may come back and say, well, how about this? And we do want to consider it. I think it would be good at this point to be bringing testimony in and having more discussion. Maybe next month the committee may want to move on to the next topic while we go and do some more research, or you folks can go out and discuss with your communities about, you know, how do you want to view this, and what would you like or not like. Again, the idea is, out of the 68 shoreline parks, 16 have special legislation. That leaves 50 with no special protections. So 50 that are vulnerable at any point under social media or return of the tourism industry or whatever else to become the next hotspot. the next area where places are going, the next group of community that starts to come in here to you and to me that says, let's ban this. And the more unenforceable the existing ordinance becomes because we have customized a la carte, different legislation park by park. So the idea is let's get out ahead of that. Let's come up with something. It's not easy. It's not going to be easy, and I don't know that we're going to get to 100% agreement, but I think a lot of these ideas are going to be good ideas, and already, like last month, this one about the painted stalls, everyone I've talked to likes that one.
So I guess my last thought is, Kalani'anaʻola Beach Park is on Hawaiian homelands. So it's going to have its own thing. So definitely that conversation is going to be hot and heavy. I can tell you right now, they're not for any of it. I would say that the other 5 I can work on. So if the idea here is to take what you have, take it back, I can work on the other 5 that might, people might have input on. There are no homes around Kahe power plant, so it really is just the people who frequent it, which more or less, it already has tons of commercial activities because people scuba dive there all the time. Cars are pulling up, they're getting in. So I think this one would need some regulation probably. And then I guess my last thought is because on the parking stalls one, on 5 of mine, they have 0, but it technically is 0 because we don't have any stalls. Everyone just parks in the dirt. So I think if everyone's parking in the dirt, then no tour buses.
Well, as you said, we do not want buses parking in unpaved areas because the weight over time is going to create bad erosion problems. And we already have enough bad erosion problems in our shoreline areas. We don't want to make it worse. Okay. So that's why for this purpose, we were looking just at the paved parking. I do want to mention something about Hawaiian homelands, though, because that came up. When Waimanalo District Park, Waimanalo community was taking a look at legislation there, and I was saying they didn't want to do the full-on ban because of things like the Gabby Festival and the bouncy houses. Those include commercial aspects.
Understood.
So yeah. So you have conflicting desires.
Well, I think
within the community. I just want to say we have to be careful because I think if people were to go to DHHL and say absolutely no commercial, the outcome of that may be taking away some things that the community wants to continue to support. So that's why in this bill we had things like we want to allow buses with school groups to come in. So that's an exemption from the recreational stop and the restriction. We want to allow, handy vans. We want to allow things like that. So you just want to be. It took a lot of time to come up with that legislation on Waimanalo in order to be able to craft it to allow the stuff they wanted and not the other. And I just want to caution people to.
No, I understand that. I wasn't saying not on all of it. I thought today was about recreational stops. So if we're just talking about recreational stops, we've had this conversation multiple times at the neighborhood board at Kalani'anaʻola Beach Park. So in the realm of recreational stops, because you can't really get in and out of there with large vehicles because the tree that's on the corner when you come out on Anakuli Ave, I'm just saying in regards to that, we've had that conversation. But yes, in regards to school buses coming in, the park being used for obviously Prince Kuhio Day and other things that the community wants, they're in favor of that. So thank you so much, Chair. Thank you, Director.
Thank you. Questions? Councilmember Kiaina.
Thank you, Director, for the presentation. I just want to make sure that I get my facts straight. With regard to the sheet that has Shoreline Park, it says 10 acres or less. Should that be 10 acres or more?
On the spreadsheet, we have both. We have one tab for 10 acres or less. Sorry, we have one tab for under 10 acres, and then we have a second tab that's 10 acres or greater. So between the 2 tabs, you would see all 68 shoreline parks. And by the way, we're human. If people see errors in this, please let us know.
Yeah, because the one that says 10 acres or less, all of them are more than 10 acres. So I'm just trying to get my bearings here. But thank you for the layering. I do want to talk about the Hawaiian homelands. And first, let me answer the question with regard to rest stops first, because that is the scope of this hearing. So you already know my mana'o, no rest stops in Waimanalo and Kailua, because that's the law. Kaneohe, I'm not even there yet, and I can't get there yet until I have a level of confidence that all the hard-fought protections that the community have fought for in Waimanalo and Kailua are safeguarded. So it's part of my toolbox, but I'm not there yet. You got to be patient with me. I would like to say, however, since many of you know I care deeply about the Hawaiian Homelands Program, you need to put a layer as a matter of equity to flag it. And so maybe I just want to have this discussion first with regard to the scope. So that would include, and correct me if I'm wrong, so that would be Kalaniana Ole Beach Park in Nanakuli, Waimanalo Beach Park, Kaiona Beach Park, Kaupo Beach Park, and Makapu'u Beach Park. Is that correct? Is that the universe of Hawaiian homelands that the Department of Parks and Rec has under their jurisdiction?
I need to go back and double check because there, as Councilwoman Tupola said, there's going to be other areas, and I also just want to double check on those parks. So let us get back to you on that. Okay, if you
could, license agreement number 547, and this was initiated on July 7th, 1999, with an opportunity to re-up to 2041, which was done so on June 22nd, 2020. So the reason I'm saying this is that on top of all of the layers that you guys have created, you cannot discount the fact that these parks in particular are Hawaiian homelands for a couple of reasons. Apart from the fact that you're right, it has some of the verbiage with regard to commercial activities and what can and cannot be done. But when I talk about big picture, you know, I have a hard time sitting here knowing that the Parks and Rec is not paying anything for the license agreement, because for Waimanalo Beach Park, it's 76.2 acres. And so it's a lost opportunity for Hawaiian families to be able to be homesteading because of this, and that needs to be weighed. And so when you do your layering, I just would like a flag to denote which are Hawaiian homelands as we move forward with this process. But I don't need to belabor where my position is, that in order to have a more robust discussion on the overall intent on Bill 19, I respectfully ask that at the next hearing that you move forward with my CD1 to take out all of the laws on the books and move forward with this discussion, because otherwise it's going to be very difficult for us to be able to talk about all of the good things in here because of the weight that you are putting on our communities. And again, I'm a beneficiary of the Hawaiian Homelands Trust, and I have dedicated my whole life to fighting for the disrespect that the federal government in the state of Hawaii have had toward Native Hawaiians and the beneficiaries. So for whatever little nexus the city has, it is not your fault. It is their fault. But just remember against this backdrop that the healing is continuing for us. We have been dispossessed in our own homeland, and that's not right. So while we're talking about recreational stops, it's a little hard for us to be sitting here and to be civilly having this discussion. So I just ask that you do that. You know my opinion. You're going to hear from the community. Thank you so much.
And Councilwoman, if I may, we will go back and we'll add another layer and mapping to identify which ones are under allocated for us to manage from DHHL. And I appreciate the comments that you make. I do want to say just on that one, the last thing that you said, this bill is not about how can we promote commercial activities in parks. This bill is about, we want parks to be primarily for recreational uses. And in the absence of taking management, what we saw in communities is that the commercial activities overran the recreational uses. So this bill is an attempt to come up with a way to find a management strategy that puts the recreational uses first and limits the commercial uses. And the conversation is, you know, what can be acceptable to the community overall that you guys want to support. So we're not in any way, shape, or form trying to promote commercial activities in our parks. We take the recreational primacy of parks very to heart, and we actually put that in the bill because it's not in the current ordinance. And we wanted to make it clear in the current ordinance that that is the primary purpose for the parks for the city and county of Honolulu.
I applaud you for that overall intent, but with regard to where we are in our communities, it is going to be increasing commercial activities. And so, again, I ask that we be taken out of the bill.
Any questions, members? I do have questions, Director. Based on the data, can you recommend which beaches are suitable for recreation stops?
I think in looking at the data, what seems more obvious to us is which ones that should be taken off of the list as suitable for recreational stops. I think if they, with the possible exception of Halona Blowhole, which is a short stop for a picture, if it doesn't have a comfort station, it may not be suitable for a recreational stop. If there are too few paved parking stalls, it should not be open for a recreational stop. And when I say too few, again, we used 20 because in Bill 19, we proposed no more than 3 buses at a time. You know, figuring a bus may take up 2 parking stalls, that's 6 parking stalls, that leaves 14 left, you know, or more for the general public. You know, that seemed a right balance. But if we come up with a different approach to management that's different than that, the number of what may be an appropriate number of parking stalls may vary. And we may need to go back and again take a look at things like, are there 2 entrances? Are there ways to make it so you know, they're not backing up? But that's another characteristic that I think we should be looking at about whether certain parks are not suitable for recreational stops. Size is a little bit more arbitrary, you know, because some of it is the configuration of the park and the location. So, you know, we put the size in here as a characteristic, but again, I think more the hours of operation and the days of the week would probably be the biggest impact for the communities, and to narrow those hours, the window, and then to keep it during the weekdays, not on the weekends and not on the holidays.
Can you work with HPD to get the number of citations they gave out as a result of enforcing current park commercial bans?
We can work with them. I'm not sure whether they're going to sort it out by park. We'll see if they do. And but we can also get more information about how the parking citation process works, where our park ranger program is looking into that now. And so we'll get some more information on that.
And regarding enforcement, who gets fined? The driver of the vehicle or the business owner?
That is actually in the existing ordinance. So under citations, it is to the owner of the motor vehicle, I believe. So you do not have to prove, you know, that the owner did the violation. It's just, so it's like a parking ticket. You lend your car to your cousin, they go and park, you get a ticket, it goes to you. Then you got to deal with your cousin.
Okay, any questions? Councilmember Tupola.
Thank you, Chair, for your questions. I guess with your recommendation and what the director said about what they recommend for where commercial stops should be, will the department be coming forward with an abbreviated list that is going to to be suggested? Because, I mean, right now we're looking at different lists, which we appreciate. So if we take all the ones out that don't have the comfort station, that don't have this, then we'll be left with just the list of parks we have left to look at. Of course, I did my own, the 5 that we have left. And then also, if we can resolve that 10 acres issue, because I did look at mine on that, and I do think that that's incorrect too. But if we can get that resolved so that, you know, I think your point here is if the park is too small, if the parking is not ample, and if the bathrooms are not there, therefore no commercial stops, great, what do we have left? Because then I need to take that back to my community and figure out what's left, you know, no Hawaiian homelands, no whatever. All of those things need to be laid out so that we can take it back, get that community conversation going, and then kind of bring it back to this committee.
So again, on the maps that you have, Nate, if you want to pull it up again, I'm sorry, I walked you through the spreadsheet. We do have a tab on the spreadsheet on the parks left over if you take out under 20 paved parking stalls, smaller than 10 acres, and no comfort station. So we do have a tab for that online. But when you go to the maps, you'll see where it says shoreline parks, and you can see it's checked red right now. So if you undo that check, it will take off shoreline parks. But why don't you go ahead and put it on shoreline parks and take off right here. He's got it checked where it says shoreline parks. He's checked parking 20 paved stalls or more. Uncheck the parking 19 paved stalls or less and keep the 20 or more. And then he's unchecking the no comfort stations. So what you have there is shoreline parks with 20 paved stalls or more, and then if you check with comfort stations on that box, now that shows you the parks that have parking stalls of 20 paved stalls or more and comfort stations. And if you go down and check the box that says more than 10 acres, now you'll see the parks that are 20 paved stalls or more with comfort stations, 10 acres or greater, and you can zoom in on that map so you can identify the names of every park that meets that criteria. And you can go again, all these are online. If you look at the last page of our 3-page testimony, it has the link to the maps, and you can go online and check and uncheck different boxes, and you can see exactly which parks apply. Again, if people find errors in our spreadsheet, please point them out to us. We'll correct them, and then we'll correct it on the online maps and everything as well.
Okay, because on the email that I received of you guys' testimony, it didn't have an abbreviated list with just what's left, but maybe I need to look online, because I don't know, did you get one that just said what's left? Because I do have a spreadsheet that says all of the shoreline parks, and then I have a spreadsheet. And I get it that I can look at the map. All I'm trying to say is I just want us to be real clear on what's left so that there's no confusion about what parks we're talking about. Because I don't want to say, oh, I looked at the map and had 5 left, but then yours one said 6. Like, I just want a clear list. These are the 12 we're talking about so that as council members, we can go get our input and then come back with that more accurate.
So again, council members, we will get you the information. We'll get you, I thought we had gotten you the spreadsheet. What you're looking at is the hard copy of the testimony, so to avoid confusion, we didn't have the less than, so we limited the numbers. But what came to you online and what you can tap into online is the full spreadsheet that we're demonstrating here. We can get you information. We can work with each council member on helping you identify the information that you're interested in, but we're still getting input from the community. We're about to hear a lot of testimony, so we don't have a specific hard recommendation at this point. We're just trying to give information so that people can then say, well, we think XYZ may be appropriate. Let's take a look at that. And then we can help you in looking at that, and then we could hopefully together come to what might make sense.
No, I understand that. I guess what I'm trying to say is, yes, let's get community input, but if I was able to tell my community, hey, they're looking at these 4 specifically, then I would be able to whittle down who's really interested in those 4 or what the issues are, as opposed to we're generally just wanting your input. Because last night at the neighborhood board, I passed out a copy of this bill. It's very huge, very hard for everyone to understand. So if I broke it down and said, they're talking about these 4 parks on the west side, so this is what we need to get information on, then it'd be a lot easier. So I will look on your your website, because as you said in the testimony, it didn't have the less than spreadsheet with just a few parks left. So thank you for your work. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, no more questions from the council members. We will now proceed with in-person testimony in the council chambers. Do we have any registered testifiers for this item?
Yes, Chair, we do.
Oh, okay. All right. I'm going to do the first 5, so if you guys can line up, that'd be great. Again, we want to try to be respectful to everyone, so if you can keep your testimony at the time limit, that would help. Thank you, guys. We'll start off with, I think, Mariana, followed by Kuke, Kapua, Alex, and Shelby. So when you come up to the podium, state your first and your last name. All right, hold on. Okay, Councilmember Kia, I know we don't have quorum. Can you fill in? All right, thank you. Go ahead.
Okay.
Thank you.
Can you hear me? Okay, great. My name is Merania Kikaula, and I'm from Kahuku. I oppose Bill 19, but with what Mrs. Seelan said, there are other questions that have popped up. And so, first of all, I'd like to say that Hawaiian homesteads areas should be exempt. I mean, you know, just should be. And it's not just Waimanalo, it's Haula, Kahuku, okay, and other parts of the island. All right, 3 reasons why we oppose this bill. There's no controlled permitting of bus companies, at least not to the degree we'd like to see. One main reason is companies are out of state, and these companies don't pay anything toward infrastructure taxes, especially our water supply. Is that a minute? I don't think so. Yeah. Okay, and of course, it contributes to high cost of living, fees, taxes, food, electricity, through the roof for our families. All right, the windfall of money coming into the state through the program should be given back to the people of Hawaii and not kept by the government and its out-of-state sources, be it through refunds or tax exemptions, food vouchers. Number 2, hire parking attendants, private companies. How big is the state now? Isn't it the biggest business owner in the state? We need private companies to control problems on the beach and to control tour bus companies who overload buses and who don't pick up tourists on time, if that's the case. All right, you got to keep in mind these exemptions have to be.
And thank you so much.
Okay, and then there's the beautification program too, which I think is necessary because the erosion problem is terrible. We can easily put in shrubbery like no kahakai, which is very resilient and low and will keep the sand in place. All right, the funding, you don't even have to worry about that. All right, that can come from Nature Conservancy, who's given $1 billion of taxpayer money per year. All right, so I suggest we take that into consideration. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, all right.
Kuike Kamakeo, hello. To the Honorable Chair Tolba and esteemed members of the committee, aloha. I'm deeply troubled by the proposed Bill 19 that will reopen our coastal parks in Waimanalo to commercialization and recreational stops by industries that have historically profited from the exploitation and prostitution of our aina, oceans, resources, and people. The total acreage of these parks in Waimanalo is 171.71 acres. Of this land, the county leases approximately 96.95 acres from the Department of Hawaiian Homelands. I'm sharing this data with you today to point out that 56.4% of the coastal lands in Waimanalo that will be affected by the changes from Bill 19 is DHHL. By opening these coastal parks to commercialization and recreational stops, you're not only violating the contract in the First Amendment to License Agreement number 547, but you're also perpetuating the systemic inequality that has plagued our community for far too long. This is an act of aggression against the Native Hawaiian people, and it must be opposed at all costs. As public servants, it is your kuleana, it's your duty to uphold your oath of office and work towards equity for all members of our communities with integrity. By opposing this bill, you can demonstrate your commitment to justice and fairness for Native Hawaiians. Mahalo, Chair, for the opportunity to share.
Thank you, brother. Next, Kapua, followed by Alex, then Shelby, and then Mylisa.
Aloha kako, Kapua Maderas from Waimanalo. I am here to represent myself, and just before I start my testimony, I just want to let you guys know that at a recent event we had in Waimanalo, we were able to collect over 250 signatures in one day that agreed with us that Bill 38 needs to stay. This is my testimony today. I stand in opposition of Bill 19. As I stated before, Bill 38 is what our Waimanalo community agreed to. And because Bill 38 and all the long hours of community time and effort it took to pass it is literally being ignored, I will totally oppose Bill 19, and I will ask the question, what has the current mayor and city council done to reverse the inequity for Kanaka Maoli? As you know, all of our beach parks in Waimanalo either sit on Crown lands or Hawaiian homelands. These lands are to benefit Kanaka Maoli and Hawaiian homestead beneficiaries. I take offense to the proposed Bill 19 and its amendments that leaves absolutely no room for equity for Kanaka Maoli. Each of you council members took an oath to uphold the laws of this state of Hawaii and its constitution, which calls for the betterment of Native Hawaiians. Bill 19 would be another step toward prolonging the illegal oppression of our people. Today, it seems that the betterment of tourism and commercialism is paramount to the betterment of Native Hawaiians. And for far too long, the Department of Hawaiian Homelands has allowed the city to lease our pristine shorelines. And I thought it was for $1 a year, but found out today it's for $0 a year, with no benefit to Kanaka Maoli. Many who are struggling just to make ends meet. Our Waimanalo community voiced our mana'o very, very loudly, and it was ignored. This time has come, the time has come for us to take back what belongs to us. So if Bill 38 will not be included, then Waimanalo will prepare itself to manage our own parks and our own beaches. Negotiations are closed. Waimanalo is not for sale. Mahalo.
Thank you. We'll move on to Alex Wilson, followed by Shelby, then Mylisa, and then Ann. Go ahead, sir.
Yeah, hi, my name is Alex Wilson. I represent a small tour company, Oahu Photography Tours. I'm probably the odd person out here. I came actually with a whole preparation of stuff to say, but after listening to what the director had to say, kind of re-educated me on what really is going on. There's a lot of bad management, really, and I'd like that you guys are starting to figure this out. We run a small van. It's 12-pack with 7 people usually. I think that when you guys can figure out maybe a classification of the weights, the people, all that kind of stuff would be good. Unfortunately, I know the frustration of everybody with the tourism and all that. It's not going anywhere. Hawaii's put their eggs in one basket, and you have to better manage it. There's not going to be a blanket to where you can get rid of this. I know the frustration of a lot of people, but we really have to work together to figure out how we can benefit each side of the party, where you guys can certify us, maybe have a certification and historical education, classification, any type of that kind of stuff that we then pay as a tour company that then could go to these parks to fix up the facilities. Those bathrooms, the parking lots are terrible. They really are. These people that are coming here on vacation, they don't want to drive around. They want to be taken in a carpool narrated tour, right? I know a lot of people don't like that, but they don't want to have to drive in this terrible traffic, these roads that are terrible potholes. You can just lose children and they're so deep. And if we can help that, if we can better manage that, you guys can work together to get rid of the overflow, the congestion. I think that a carpool business is what we are. I think that can be helped if we can manage it better. And, you know, I could go on and on about this. I sympathize with a lot of people about this issue. But again, I do run a small business, so I'm on this one side of the fence. And I try to educate people. I try to keep things good, right? I don't want people out there. Nobody on my tour van has ever gone and grabbed a turtle. Nobody's gone out there and done somewhat of illegal activity, right? And so if you let people do that on their own, that's where you get this frustration. So it's more about, I think, a frustration of people being uneducated and not being guided. I think a guiding service is actually good to keep people controlled up. But I hope that you guys continue this discussion and figure out how you can manage it to where you have to know that this industry is not going anywhere. Either we are certified, or if you go out there like me every single day, you can see the illegal operations that go on day in and day out. And you don't have the resources to manage it. There's nobody there to do it. So I hope that you guys can continue this discussion, and I will be coming to these more because I'd like to hear what's going on. So I thank you very much.
Mr. Wilson, I have a question. Yeah. What are your hours of operation, and what times do you typically drop off and you pick up your passengers? And then which parks do you go to?
We would go to the Blowhole. We would go to Sandy Beach Park because we do get a permit for that location. We would go to, actually we stop in the back of Waimanalo to take a photograph of the mountains from just on the side of the road, right? And then we go to Chinaman's Hat, Kualoa Beach Park. And then we would go to the Kahuku farmlands. And then we would go to the Haleiwa area where the people go and they go get lunch and stuff over there. And we have actually done where we go into Turtle Bay and take people there so they can go and enjoy like that area. So it's a private property because we've been blocked everywhere we go. You know, and that's the thing. We've been blocked everywhere, and we try to keep a legal operation, but we see time and time, and I'm sure you guys can go out there. There's tons of illegal operations that go on, you know. And so if we could just figure out how to work on both sides of the fence, that would be great.
And what are your hours of operation again?
The hours of operation, the open business would be 4 a.m. until 9 a.m., but that's going to be the business of operation. We would pick up at about 7:30 a.m., and then we'll get back on our Circle Island tour, get back at 3 p.m. or 5 p.m.
And I know you're not speaking for all the tour companies, but like normally, what time do they start picking up visitors? And then
we would pick up people earlier because we do a sunrise tour where we go out and we look at we watch the sunrise from the Blowhole.
Okay.
And then we would get back at probably about like 3 o'clock on that one. But we don't actually get involved with the group. If you guys go and just sit at those beach parks, you know exactly the march that goes on. It starts at about 8 o'clock. And they follow everybody, and they stay for about 15 minutes. I don't know too many people that stay maybe 20 minutes, maybe 30 minutes or so, but I don't see many people staying at these parks for that long on time. I mean, you know, of course, that's probably the exception.
Okay,
you know?
thank you.
Okay,
Thank you for coming to testify. Moving on, Melissa, followed by Ann, Jody, and Emmeline.
You forgot one handsome person here.
Okay, good. I love your Pikachu, by
Thank
the way.
you. Shelby Billionaire here live. I'm here to represent the Royal Hawaiian Kingdom Party because now we just talk about Native Hawaiians, which is Kanaka Maoli. We're talking about our ethnicity, and I love the city and county, but you guys suck. The parks, we can talk Makua Beach, preservation, you guys don't manage it at all. The dolphin tours, people that come, you're not there physically. We call the cops don't come. We call DLR tip sign, DLR does not come. So you're telling me you're gonna manage all these new tourist stops, recreation, when you can't even manage the current beaches now. That's impossible. You don't live in reality. You know how much homeless people are on the beaches and in these parks? All your data is probably as much homeless people are on there. You're not living in reality. So I wanna tell you straight up, from the younger generation, everything you're doing is wrong. You just can't get a blanket, throw it all across and say we're gonna cover it all because the mayor said so. The mayor is not higher than the people who live here in the islands. It's not higher than a allodial title. If you guys went to school and you're talking about law, allodial title is higher than fee simple and leasehold. When did the leasehold and leasees become higher than allodial title crown land holders and the royal noble heirs right behind me? I don't understand when you're preaching all these laws and a bill is not a law. Right? It's not a law yet. But here you are, you're going to quote, and you say, we're only going to talk about recreational stops. But this is just a foot in the door for more problems. The commercial boating, all kind of real estate. You're not stopping the boats, the illegal fishing down in Waianae. You're not stopping Pokai Bay. I love the maintenance guys who pick up the trash, but you're not doing the weeds. You're not doing the weed whacking. You're not doing the yard work. So you're telling me you're going to manage all this stuff. We can't even help our business guy here who has a small little van. You have to go back and figure out how you're really going to manage things in reality. Because to me, you're not dealing in reality. You're dealing in some fantasy land. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Okay, let's move on to Mylisa, followed by Ann, Jody, and Emmeline.
Aloha, my name is Mia Lisa Otis. I'd first like to address the new information that we got. There are 6 parks in Waimanalo that fit the criteria for Bill 19. Probably 4 actually fit the acreage. But that's within the 7 miles of Waimanalo, so that is not an option. 3 buses are too many. Here is a limo. We're not just talking about buses. We're talking about vans and limos. So here's a limo and a bus blocking in the residents, the community, on a weekday. So I am from Waimanalo, and I oppose Bill 19. The mayor has met intimately with the industry. That is not how you come to a compromise. I thank you, the council members and lawmakers that have met with the community. Community before commercialism, and I'll keep repeating it. In the March 15 council meeting, there were 68 opposed, 3 support. In the last committee meeting, there were 99 opposed and 2 support, not including the majority that opposed in person. We won't support Bill 19 until the CD1 is adopted, because the solution already exists. Please amend section 10-1.3A13 for it should read, recreational stops of any length of any time at any beach park, except that no permits may be issued for recreational stops. And undo the repeal of ROH 10-1.2H and I. As council members, you want to know what the people that voted for you want. Here we stand, we want to keep our laws in place. So my suggestion or our demand is to adopt CD1. The Sea and Pesca Committee stands for culture. We hope you stand for the preservation of our community's culture. We support your community, and we thank you for respecting ours. Mahalo.
Thank you. Any questions for the testifier? Okay, moving on. Let's see. Ann, followed by Jody, Emmeline, and Ikini.
Hi, my name is Ann, and I oppose Bill 19. I live in Laie on the North Shore. Are we really reduced to a spreadsheet? What are you proposing is still too much. You're not addressing the impact of 250 tourists a day that come to our beach, Kokololeo. We have, the buses stay there for an hour and a half because they swim for an hour. They walk through the crowds, they walk through our community. We've talked about the pool in Kahuku. That's where we live, that's our community. We are underserved up there. So busing just adds too much usage. I have a few points here. The tail is a tail wagging the dog. Let's lower tourism by enforcing the Airbnbs. We have so many illegal Airbnbs all over the island, especially in the North Shore. Let's get that figured out so we don't have growing tourism. You say no stops where there are no improvements. Kokololeo needs we don't have improvements. Our facility is subpar. It cannot accommodate 250 people a day. Am I doing the math right? 10 buses by 25 people per bus? That's 250. It's too much. The impact on our community is too much. 8 to 5 is too long. Traffic with our kids going to and from school, and then the people that come to the beach after school. Erosion in Kokololeo is a big problem. I was in the ocean the day that one of the giant ironwoods fell into the ocean about 50 yards from us. We have a big problem with that. It's just too many tourists. That's about all I have to say, really. But I think we need to follow the tourists that do come. They don't follow our ways. They walk through the parties and tents. They litter. They don't follow the park rules. So they don't take care of our aina. And that is my testimony.
Thank you so much for your testimony. So next we have Jody Green, followed by Emmeline Fonotti, and then Ekeni Lindsay.
Aloha, my name is Jody Green. I've lived next to Ololoi Street since 1953. I'm opposed to Bill 19 unless the existing protections we just passed are kept in place. We have seen what happens to our community when profits for the tour industries and wedding industries bombard our community beaches. When will local people have peace and a place to relax, enjoy, and recharge, recreate after working hard to keep up with the high cost of living? How much more do we have to put up with and give to the tourists? Why keep catering to companies that want to make money off what's left of Oahu? Waimanalo has crowds of beachgoers, locals, visitors, because it's one of the most beautiful beaches. Waimanalo already has too many tour helicopters, too many cars parking all over the place. We have small little narrow roads. We got car alarms. We have domestic violence, homeless, fireworks, bombs, military, choppers. The choppers are a big problem. Huge planes. We put up a lot.
Jody, if you could wrap up your testimony.
Yeah, I think I will. Thank you.
Thank you. And okay.
I want to thank Esther Kiaina for the CD1, and we would like it, the protections in place. We've had enough. We saw what happens when they come into our neighborhood. They're beginning to come again. They are disrespectful. They are aggressive. The tour drivers, the limo drivers are rude, and they disregard the rules. Mahalo.
Thank you. And members, I forgot to offer you the opportunity for questions for Jody or Anne, if you have any.
Yeah, you guys have any questions about what it's like to live next to a loiloi in Waimanalo Beach Lots and in Waimanalo? Any questions?
Oh, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, who's next? And thank you, Councilmember Okimoto. Okay. Emmeline?
Aloha. My name is Emmeline Funati from the village of Hauula. And I'm so confused. And if I may direct a question to the director, where does Kokololio stand right now as far as all of your whittling down of, please, if I may? Can you just answer that for us? Because you already mentioned Kokololio and you've been there. So where do we stand right now? Do we come in your 10-acre lot? Do we come under the 20 parking stalls? Do we get, may I?
No, you just have your testimony.
Okay,
and
all
yeah,
right,
thank
okay
you.
then.
Appreciate it.
Okay, so I'll try that. But in any case, I'm hearing recreational stuff going that you want to curb or to help with recreational. Not once have I heard the fact that Kokololio Beach Park is where, this is where we perpetuate our cultural traditions. And we've already seen or heard that Kahuku, Hauula, and Laie, we're really isolated. We are out there in rural areas. We are grassroots and we have our needs. Kokololio Beach Park has become the place for us to gather, to have our celebratory events such as baptisms, graduations, birthdays, weddings, reunions, and more importantly, to memorialize and mourn our loved ones. So some of these events we can plan and obtain permits from the city, county. However, sadly, deaths of our loved ones are not planned, and hence the daily use of Kokololio Beach Park for us. The arrival of busloads of tourists, during these events is disruptive and distracting and offensive. As we know, our Polynesian culture is highly sensitive, and I've already mentioned this as an earlier thing, sensitive to immodesty and having dozens of bikini-clad tourists moving around in our events and our family reunions and that. So I do oppose the Bill 19. I ask that you would continue to maintain, what was it, Bill 3848? And that special consideration should be given to Kokololio Beach Park because we are designated camping ground, and hence that's why we have 2 entries for the campers to go in and out, not for the buses, filled with tourists to go in and out. Mahalo.
Thank you, Ms. Fanotti. Any questions for the testifier? Okay, let's move on. Kini, followed by Luisa, Lourdes, and Sally.
Aloha, Chair Toba, council members. My name is Ekini Lindsay, born and raised of Hawaii Island, Kanaka Maoli. Before I begin my testimony, I would like to recognize the many kupuna who have crossed over into the next realm, who stood at this very pulpit fighting, pleading, testifying on this exact same bill we are opposing today, Bill 19. Same bill, different era. I am noticing and questioning myself, why are the same bills appearing and repeating every decade that do not protect, secure cultural, and activate the traditions of the Hawaiian culture? For example, the overpopulation of tourism in our neighborhoods, in our community. Many of you here present as council members have the koko, the blood, or derive from some cultural base. This is why we understand the issues deeply. It saddens me that perhaps Mayor Banjardi was not raised on universal morals, empathy, truth, respect, honor. I plead on all of you, my fellow cultural council members. You have the ike to educate and school Mayor Blangiardi and others to oppose Bill 19 in this capacity. Perhaps that's the missing element or component, basic childhood humanity, principles and skills. Mahalo.
Thank you. Any questions for the testifier? Okay, moving on to Luisa, followed by Lourdes, Sally, and then Michael.
Aloha mai kākou, Chair Augie, Chair Council, my apology. Andrew Tupola, I've been trying to practice your name, but I'm reading it off of this. So I'm not cheating. And that's all that's here. I think Quino Okimoto was it. Okay. Continue. My name's Louisa Kiave. I am a voter. I am a voter. I'm not just saying this to get your attention. I am on the, I'm a member for the Park and Recreation and Transportation Committee for Waimanalo Neighborhood Board. Number 32, under our Chair Kimiona Kani and his committee members. Okay. So I'm just going to do a quick share. Waimanalo Parks and Recreation and Restroom Fields Parking Lot Campsite District Park are all unimproved for more than 25 years. Only now, 2022, 2023, our Kalani Anaole Highway is being fixed and repaved. Waimanalo District Park offices on Humaniki Street and Waimanalo District Park office on Kalani Anaole Highway, AKA known as the Pavilion site, has been neglected or not fixed. Only now, 2023, our Waimanalo Beach parking lot on the ocean side just been fixed and reproved. Okay. So we waited 25 years to see our community improved and safe. This is embarrassing to see when these people come from far, or the people that live there, and they walk through, or they spend the day, at the beach or picnicking, whatever it may be. So I commend our council, Vice Chair Ezekiel Aina, for Bill 3834 CD1 to move forward, to keep the peace and balance in Kailua, Waimanalo, North Shore, Kokolio Park. I can't speak for the other communities, the parks and beaches on Oahu, but my heart goes out to you. I oppose Bill 19 to keep Waimanalo, Waimanalo country. Mahalo and God bless you all, City Council of Honolulu.
Thank you. Okay, Louisa, followed by Sally, Michael, and then I'll ask if anyone else would like to testify, but please take the podium.
My name is Lourdes Milan. I am a resident of Waimanalo. I oppose Bill 19. I do appreciate that you're trying to figure out how to do recreational stops for commercial activity, which is not the same thing. You do have to first get enforcement. You're talking about all these ideas, but no one's going to enforce it. The police department is limited. They have other things to do than to go over and give citations. The community itself shouldn't be doing that job. You first need to get the Rangers program going before you get anything else started. And the reason why you can't do an island, what do you call it? I think a blanket, all island wide, is because Hawaii itself, each island is different. It's not like the rest of the US. You can't compare it. That is why every single community has their own, not rules, but reasons. This place is very, very different. It's very special. And like everyone says, first off, you're in occupied land. That's huge in itself. That right there is a starting point. That is why every community has come up with protecting their community. That's why they're fighting for it. And they will continue to fight for it. So I oppose Bill 19 as is.
Thank you. Any questions for the testifier? Okay, moving on to Sally. Sally Trasher, followed by Michael Waters.
Aloha kako. My name is Sally Thrasher. I am Chalaki. I am from the continent. I'm from Turtle Island, and I'm so thankful. I stand here with my ancestors. I'm not here by myself. They are not here by themselves. We are thousands. We are hundreds of thousands. We are people speaking from our own mana. We are people speaking from protecting the Aina. And I came and I joined this community, and Hunani Niho was able to be reborn. It was always there, and it was covered up, and now it's reborn. It's the people's lands. It's these folks' lands. They're protecting their own homes. Money doesn't matter. These heartbeat matters. Everybody's heartbeat matters. And people coming in and wanting to make a living and raping the Aina and coming in and using the resources isn't protecting the Aina. And I want to just read my testimony to keep the current laws. I oppose Bill 19. Keep the current laws. It protects the people in the Aina that you're supposed to be protecting and supporting, to put people of these neighborhoods above the businesses and industries that come and go for their own profit, that don't come back. They don't come back. They don't feed these people. They don't clean their yards. They don't fix the roads. They use it. And I just wanted to touch on that this is a want, not a need. Hawaii doesn't need this. There's 10.5 million tourists coming in. Hawaii has enough money to feed the colonizers, okay? It doesn't matter, size doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what the size of the beach is. I'm gonna say right now, size doesn't matter. The community matters, and that's the important thing.
Ma'am, can you please summarize? Thank you. Thank you. So I know there's a lot, but
yeah,
out of respect, and we still have people online, can you please summarize? Thank you.
Dona Dongo Ha'i. Mahalo. Thank you for allowing me to share, and thank you for allowing me in your community. and into
Thank
your
you.
homes. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Michael Waters.
Bro, that smile, man. Like me take it quick. Now I gotta laugh the whole time. If you guys have any logistic questions, I'm super happy to sit here forever and answer them. I started as a street urchin, ended up as a QA where I wrote the manual across the island. Yeah, it's like the little whack-a-mole game where it pops up everywhere. I didn't build it, but I straight up wrote the manual for it. It wasn't my writing it. It was 30-year vets around the island. I'm happy to answer questions, but we're not here for logistics. Did anybody drive from Kahuku to come argue over a number of parking spaces or anything like that? Or did you come to protect the work that you already did? You guys listening, but you're not hearing the most important part. This building here is not the right place. There's no reason they should be coming to us. We should be going to them to ask permission. If you want to start somewhere, you should have never pulled that other stuff off. As far as a recreational stop permit, that's where I could have some logistical help. But again, until they want you there, it doesn't matter. You shouldn't be there. Super simple. What Andrea said, everything spot on. Commercial operations, we only need a couple. What Esther said, her CD1, the only reservation that I have is maybe 1 to 2 beaches on the North Shore. That shouldn't be me. That should be the North Shore deciding it. Otherwise, you should put on CD1. And I hate saying that because I know as soon as you do, a lot of these folks aren't going to be here anymore, and I'm going to be sitting here spinning my wheels again for the logistical part. But again, logistics not as important as those guys. And then Santi Kapua and a couple other folks say, I hope they take every single inch of Hawaiian homestead lands back from the city and county of Honolulu, not for any lofty reason other than I know for a fact they will do a better job managing it than you will.
Thank you. Any questions for the testifier? Thank you, Michael. Okay, clerks, are there any registered? Okay. If you want to testify, go ahead and stand in line, state your first and your last name.
Hello, Mike Ako. Wow, Kalani Kalima. I'm a native son of Waimanalo, born and raised. Always going to be there. I just wanted to share a little bit because I was a part of the Bill 8. And a lot of the language that is put into Bill 19 was from Bill 8, Monday through Friday, 8 to 5, no holidays, no weekends, and all of that kind of stuff. Waimanalo didn't agree to let Hunananiho go. Ikaika told us that that was the only way that the city council was going to allow that through. He put that in there. He also pitted us up against the film industry, the wedding industry, the film industry, the photography, and everybody else. Try and look back at that time when all we was trying to do is protect our beach parks from over-tourism. That's all we wanted. He ended up bringing in all of that stuff. So beyond that, yeah, what we're asking for is to amend Bill 19. Amend Bill 19 for the recreational stops, no permits, no matter how long the time. To restore all of the protections that Bill 38 had provided for the beaches of Waimanalo. We already established that. You guys have that on the lease. All of the beaches, the whole coastline of Waimanalo is under DHHO. That's it. You guys get them under lease. So that means all of the terms of the lease you guys already agreed upon. That is the basis of Bill 8. Once we ended up going into that Donovan De La Cruz ended up putting up, the city council ended up adopting because they already agreed upon it. That's why we ended up putting that inside of there. And then number 3 is to remove Hunananiho, Waimanalo Beach Park, and Makapu'u from you guys' consideration for the commercialism. Mahalo nui.
Any questions for the testifier? Okay, moving on. Go ahead, first, sir. State your first and your last name, please. Thank you.
Aloha, Council Chairman and Vice Chairman and Council members. My name is Bessie Kamake Aina. I used to live in Laia and has currently moved to Hauula. I'm a Kokolu Beach mermaid, and I've swam there for over 20 years. And that is our exercise in that area of Kokolio Beach. I'm in favor of to protect our Kokolio Beach, and I had a speech to bring this afternoon, but due to my move, I couldn't find it, and the Wi-Fi wasn't working right. So here I am. I just want to say thank you and consider us Kokolio Beach.
Thank you. Any questions? Okay. All right.
Aloha, I'm Charlene Kalama again. What I wanted to say earlier, listening to everything that's going on, I'm going to change. Okay? My Auntie Pilahipaki Silva and I aunt to myself shared for the first time in the University of Hawaii in Manoa, 1952, what is known today as the Aloha Spirit. It is in our Constitution as the Aloha Spirit Law. Initially, it was created as a tropical prayer. But because it couldn't be in the school systems, it was changed to Aloha Spirit. I'm against Article 19. Why? I'm a kumuhula, I'm a kumukula. I teach in our schools. We use our beach in Waimanalo from the beginning all the way to Makapu'u Point, where the children can no longer go in. But when we go to practice and teach them down there, we're blocked by many tourists, and that's their classroom. That's where we take them to learn to fish, to learn they clean the beach before they can go in the water. They have to clean the beach. They learn to make their ipu at the beach, as we did as keiki, with the raw sand. They learn to use that as their swimming tool instead of these plastic noodles that float around our beaches today. I want to just stop there and say, for the first letter of aloha, akahai, Hawaii meaning kindness, to be expressed with a feeling of tenderness, ending with the last letter A, aho nui, Hawaii meaning patience, to be expressed with a feeling of perseverance. We have been patient for many years. Please relook at what you're trying to present and don't damage Waimanalo anymore. Our roads are being worked on. We have only 2 streets. Our children get too late school. Some children walking get hit on the crosswalk because, and I was there, we were at a stop and a nurse that is a traveling nurse came around the car and slammed a child off our road. Please rethink. Our traffic is bad. We have no space for these buses and these tour groups when our children can't even attend their own Aina area to continue to learn the practices that will die with us if we don't continue to teach them naturally. Mahalo nui.
Thank you. Questions? Okay, move on.
Aloha, my name is Tanoi Reed. I'm standing here in opposition to Bill 19, specifically because of the tour buses at my beachfront home, Kokololio Beach Park. This bill wants to give a blanket across all of the parks, but each park is unique. Unlike Kualoa, which has no residential area, Kokololio is surrounded by homes. Some share the backyard fence with the park itself. It's our front yard. We don't have a caretaker. Right here, my aunties here, we are the caretakers of the park. We pick up the rubbish, we kick out the homeless, we do all the footwork to keep this beautiful. For the past year, since 38's been in, we haven't seen that many tour buses, and it's been awesome. But prior to that, picking up shampoo bottles, in the shower, we're seeing all this rubbish. Tour bus drivers come by, they drop the people off, go to Papa Oli's, eat their lunch for lunch break, come back an hour later, and that's it. I mean, they're not being tour guides. If you want to do bathroom breaks, all for it. Come out, show the beach, give a little history lesson, but get back in and leave. Let the tourists come back later when they rent cars. That's all I gotta say. Opposition to 19. Mahalo.
Thank you. Question? Okay.
Aloha, my name is Suzanne Reed. I grew up on the west side of Oahu and now reside in Laie. I currently live across the street from Kokololio Beach Park. During the weekdays, it's just so beautiful. I don't mind. Some people complain about the noise, but I love hearing the children play, especially in the afternoons when all the parents are there supporting their kids in sports, soccer, baseball. The families are there at the beach. They're there on the weekends. Everyone's enjoying it. And during that short period of time that we did have the tour buses there, it was very disheartening to see the trash that was left behind, just the disrespect that was there. We didn't see the tour bus drivers that were there giving them cultural lessons. For me, Kokololio Beach Park is a community park. It's there for the people, the local people, and they do preserve, like in the, at least twice a week, we have Keiki doing fire knife dancing, and it's something that's perpetuating our culture. And, I used to hang out in Waikiki when I was in college, and Waikiki is no longer desirable. I don't see any local people there, and it just breaks my heart. So I oppose Bill 19. Thank you.
Thank you. Clerks, do we have any more in-person testifiers?
Chair, there are none.
Okay, we'll move on now to virtual. Let's see. Yes, we'll move on to registered remote testifiers. Kekoa McKillilan and then Michelle Smith. You can go ahead, Kekoa.
Mahalo, Chair Talbot, for today's discussion and for your leadership. Keikoa McClellan, for the record, comments on behalf of the Oahu Wedding Association. We want to aloha Director Thielen and her team for their hard work on these proposed safeguards for the use of our city's parks, specifically relating to limiting recreational stops, as we've heard in today's discussion. Also to Councilmember Tupolo for her passion in advocating for our West Side. Mahalo, Councilmember. And of course, I'd like to address my next comments to Councilmember Kiaina for her mana'o, particularly for the carve-out regarding to deed shell lands currently under the control of our city, and to Aloha Councilmember Kiaina for her passion and her continued advocacy for our people. For OWA, a hui of 150 Kama'aina owned, Kanaka owned in many cases businesses, this too is personal, whether celebrating the ho'oleva or the passing of a beloved family member, a baby luau or wedding or graduation. OWA's members support thousands of Oahu families each year in marking these and other life moments, many of them at our city's beautiful parks. The regulations shared today address some of the concerns that our communities have expressed around the overuse of our public parks, and in so doing, we think start to enable a fair citywide regulatory framework for permitted activities at our parks that benefit Kama'ainas. Of note, the current bans on the books, while they disallow commercial photography for Ohana holiday cards or family reunions or any homegrown activity, they do permit filming by big box studios, effectively placing a "come stop here" sign on the very beaches that we hope to protect, while simultaneously boxing out our local photographers. And so we do think that addressing the issue of public access at our parks holistically by putting safeguards around these stops, in doing so, the department takes the right approach by protecting all of our parks from overuse, protecting the rights of our Kanaka Maoli, and ensuring that Kama'aina families that use our parks for the celebrations that are dear to us and who support these celebrations with their businesses can continue to do so legally and with minimal impact to our communities. Mahalo to you and the committee for today's discussion.
Thank you, Kiko. And in a couple of weeks, we'll be really talking specifically about photography in our parks. So thank you. Move on to, let's see, Michelle Smith, followed by Tessa Gomes, and then Bill Hicks. Michelle, are you there?
Chair, testifier is not logged on.
Okay, we'll move on to Tessa Gomes.
Chair, testifier is not logged on.
Okay, we'll move on to Bill Hicks. Mr. Hicks.
Aloha, Chair. I'm Bill Hicks, Chairman of the Kailua Neighborhood Board, speaking in opposition to the portion of Bill 19 that would repeal the existing ban on most commercial activity at Kailua Beach Park. Bill 11 of 2012 was intentional and implemented for a reason. Kailua Beach Park was being abused and overrun with commercial kayak and tour bus activity. What about now? A Windward Oahu tourism assessment conducted by the University of Hawaii compared the beach usage at Kailua Beach Park in 2007 with 2019 and found that beach usage doubled between 2007 and 2019, and that it was at a tipping point for being too overcrowded. The reintroduction of commercial activity that takes up parking and beach space and competes with family recreational activity would put Kailua Beach Park past the tipping point. Regarding the proposed activity rules, when commercial activity is not allowed, it stands out when it happens. When it is permitted, the assumption is they have a permit, even when they don't, and we have a horrible record on enforcement. We already know what will happen. So as a start, it is better to grandfather the places that have historically been abused. Councilmember Esther Kiana has introduced CD1 to Bill 19, which would retain the current protections of ROH 10-1.2H. The Kailua Neighborhood Board urges the expeditious adoption of CD1. Mahalo.
Thank you, Mr. Hicks. Any questions for the testifier? Okay. Moving on to Desiree Madison Biggs.
Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Great, thank you. Aloha, mahalo, Chair, and everyone else in the room. My name is Desiree Madison Biggs, and I'm a resident of Hauula near Kokololeo Beach Park. It was just a few months ago that we were celebrating the unanimous passage of Bill 48. And since then, the Kokololeo experience for everyone has improved tremendously, so mahalo for that break. While I appreciate the thoughtful progress represented in this bill, I oppose it as currently written, specifically as it relates to these recreational stops that we've been talking about today. It was helpful to see the data, but it's not quite nuanced enough. One question I have for Director Thielen is whether or not the fact that the park is also, if the park is also a campground and used as a community center, can that factor into the calculation? For instance, Kokololeo might have 225 parking spaces. I had no idea, but they're completely full during and throughout the dry season. And so that's not particularly helpful and might miss being in a data pool, okay? So Bill 19's goal is to establish equitable approach to park and beach usage by commercial interests, and actually Bills 48 and 38 did that already, as they struck a balance between the needs of residents, local visitors, campers, and vacationers against the increasing incursion of group tourism in all of our communities. Thanks in part to social media, tourists already have access to everything we have on the island. To increase that access through group tours creates an imbalance in favor of businesses at residents' quality of life expense, as well as the local visiting experiences of everyone around the island who already live here. Please consider a couple of things. The first is Bill 19's one-size-fits-all, as we've heard today, does not account for the uniqueness of local communities and essentially opens up all parks for tour buses to come and go as they please. If you think that they won't, you'd be mistaken. Unless there is patrolling 7 days a week, what's to stop them from coming on weekends and holidays? They used to do it all the time anyway. Second, the detailed rules set forth would mostly be unenforceable given resources today. Right now at Kokololeo, there's little to no enforcement of any rules ever. Signs are ignored by tourists and locals alike, by the way. We have few police up here on the North Shore, and to expect the police to know all the rules of this bill and show up for infractions would seem to be a waste of scarce and valuable resources. Furthermore, it's unreasonable and unfair that residents should be responsible to monitor commercial behavior and contact the police for infractions.
Ms. Biggs,
Honestly, it would
can
be a
you
part-time job.
summarize? Can you please summarize?
Yes.
Thank you.
I would love it if you guys would continue to strike the balance between not just commercial interests, but the community interests. Bill 19 undoes the progress that's already been done, and I urge you to support the balance that was struck by Bills 48 and 38, and an exception to your new plan. Mahalo.
Thank you. That was our last registered testifier. Is there anyone else remotely who wishes to testify on this item? Clerks?
Chair, there are a couple people online that's raised hands.
Okay. Okay. I see Angela, of course, and June James. So let's start with you, Angela.
Hey, Chair, Vice Chair, and the committee, Angela Melody Young. I'm testifying in support. So Bill 19 is a plan to create a commercial use system to establish protections for beaches and businesses. So it's fair and equitable. the key concern is what rights private businesses have to operate on public lands. But businesses bring in a lot of economic opportunity, and Hawaii is dependent upon tourism. So according to the U.S. Small Business Administration, 99% of businesses in Hawaii are small businesses. I get it, there has to be respect for the cultural heritage and for the Hawaiians. So, perhaps they can just all go to Ala Moana, right? Or Kakako Ward, the beach over there. So there should be a feasibility study of which beaches are suitable, practical, and reasonable, and the city can examine, how to protect cultural heritage, and then also include a working group of DLNR, business consultants, HTA, HLTA, DBED, HPD, OHA, DHHL to represent all the stakeholders. And the marine life conservation districts from
Can you
DLNR.
summarize, wrap it up, please, Angela? Thank you.
Yes, there was some things that were talked about in the director's conversation that can be accessed through data from DLNR, which conducts carrying capacity studies for the marine life conservation districts. So I think that is a good thing to try to access the data to see the carrying capacity data. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, June James. I can hear you.
Me again.
Aloha, can you hear me now?
Yep.
Oh, sorry. Thank you, everybody. I do appreciate Director Thielen and his workers providing a framework to discuss this again. But again, what's good on paper does not really translate into a quality of life for our residents. Our public parks are just about the only open and free water recreation left for our residents, and they should be able to enjoy the public resources in peace and not have to hassle or report or hope for the city to manage. So please give our residents peace and tranquility in this area. And also, seriously, we're not talking about recreational stops. We're talking about tourism stops. And the mindset for the city ought to be commercialism and tourism need not invade every inch and nook and cranny in our island. Oahu has been invaded and intruded upon, and there has to be a line of demarcation. We cannot continue to just open it up. And just a small thought, Kokoleo may have 2 comfort zones and also parking, but there are a lot of community parking, as some of the residents can testify. We are actually making a public policy here that will last beyond you or us. What do we want our public parks to be? Is it for public use for residents? Or is it for commercialism that profit from public resources? And we really also might want to look at working with hotels who are right on beach area, have the hotels open up more extra parking spaces, and so on and so forth. Again, I believe that also the hours are so
Ms.
outdated.
James, can you summarize?
Yeah,
Thank you.
yes, I will. Thank you. The hours 8 to 5 is so outdated, and many people do not hold regular working hours anymore, and there's seniors and retirements and on and so forth. But thank you for the discussion. It's a good start, and I will do some comments online and in written form. Mahalo, and everybody have a good day.
Thank you, and you have a good day yourself. Okay, is there anyone else remotely testifying, clerks?
Sure, there are none.
Okay. Members, very, very fruitful afternoon and great discussion. We are in discussion. Oh, one more? Okay, sorry. Go ahead, state your name.
good afternoon. Thank you. Actually hadn't planned to speak, but I wanted to hear everybody. So my name is Susan O'Donnell, and I've been part of the visitor industry for as long as I can remember. My grandfather started Aloha Airlines, and I have a deep respect for everyone who has to make a living here. It's very tough for a lot of us to do so. In regards to Bill 19, I am part of the Wedding Association. I'm not necessarily speaking on their behalf, but I'm speaking on my behalf because I really feel that this is a very passionate issue for everyone. And in following the very beginning closure of commercial activity out in Lanikai area and then all of the subsequent bills, it really is, the onus has been put on us as citizens to kind of manage ourselves and report our neighbors, which really is a terrible situation for all of us to be in. And as I've been trying to think, how can we all come together and make this a better situation? And I don't know whether anyone has even looked back to see with the transportation and the recreational stops, if you are a legal business operating in this fashion, you have to have a license with the PUC. And as far as enforcement, can't you call the PUC to report that someone is not doing what they're supposed to in terms of reporting so that HPD doesn't have to take time away from their much more important calls, or the crossover with DLNR, doe care officers, which is a state issue. And so I think there's just a lot of overlapping things that have happened in the last few years to get us where we are. But I do appreciate all the conversation that everybody's had, and it really shows that a lot of people care. So thank you.
I got a question, kind of on the same as the tour companies. Typically, what are your hours, and how, like on a typical day?
Well, I don't do a lot of beach weddings.
Okay.
I used to years ago. I've been doing this since 1991, so I've been in it for a long time. And my market is probably like 60% destination, and the rest are locals. So on the destination side, I would say that a lot of people come to the islands because they want to get married outdoors. So churches and chapels are not really in their sites. And for me, the beach services were always designated for what I considered elopement couples, 2, 6 people, maybe 10 altogether.
Okay.
So the footprint was small. You go in, you do the services for them, clean up the beach, and you're gone. So my preferences were like 8 or 9 o'clock in the morning would be the earliest. I never did sunrise services. And then sunset. And sunset would be an hour before the sun goes down, optimally for film.
Okay.
And then you're done. And then not on the weekends because, I want to go to the beach as a local person on the weekends and not have to be a part of all of that other stuff.
And how, you know of a lot of people that doing it without doing their permits, following the procedures?
Oh my gosh, yeah, just like that other guy testified, if you are out in the community, there are so many businesses that follow the rules.
Okay.
And then we see businesses and people that don't follow the rules. And so it is up to us too to say, hey, you should have a permit. Let me see your permit. You're not supposed to be putting this stuff out on the beach. But I think in the overall perspective, running a small business in Hawaii is really challenging. There's layer upon layer upon layer of different permits that you need to get. And I'll use that example for film, even though we're talking about transportation, is you need a city and county parks film permit. You need a DLNR, which Department of Land and Natural Resources, wiki permit to do commercial ceremony on the beach. And if you do photo or video, you need a Hawaii State film permit. Although the Hawaii State Film Permit Office sort of threw us under the bus last year when they testified saying that we are not their kuleana. But we are on the list to apply, the photo and video, still photography and video companies are supposed to get those permits. So theoretically, you might be required to have 3 different permits to go out and shoot a wedding on the beach.
Okay. So there are a lot, you're saying there are a lot of people operating illegally.
I would say that there are people that are operating because also, and no diss to the city parks department, but they are still on a paper application form. So the form itself says, please submit this 3 weeks prior,
Okay.
right? In our day and age of, click of a button, do an app, apply online, have a certificate of insurance for the city, you have to mail it in or hand walk it in. And the fee structure, I'm going to go into that because I think that that's a brilliant idea. If you're looking at permits and the discussion moves through, is have a different fee structure. If you are going to allow commercial activity, what is that?
So you're saying that possibly it's because of the process. The process may be too long, so people just, I want to know. I want to try to educate myself because we're going to eventually get to you guys.
Right.
Okay, so.
I appreciate that.
Okay, all right. Any questions for the testifier? Okay.
Thank you.
Oh.
Just comments.
Okay.
Thank you so much. And, I take to heart what you said about surviving. Businesses have a hard time surviving. We all have a hard time surviving. But I need to just say that our Native Hawaiian community has a hard time surviving. And in the case of Kailua, again, it was Hawaiian families who had their lands condemned for Kailua District Park. And it's on the backs of Hawaiian families again, who are unable to utilize the lands in Waimanalo for homesteading for the public benefit. So it's a balance we have here. And the communities of Kailua and Waimanalo have sought that balance with the approval of the city council and the mayors who approved those laws. And I think that we just need to factor that in as we move forward in Bill 19. And again, have them grandfathered. Thank you.
Thank you. Members, we are in further discussion. Okay, Councilmember Tupola.
Okay, so a few thoughts that I have. I do think that it would be a lot easier if we just narrow it down, because I think what we heard the director say was, okay, no parks with not enough stalls, no parks without bathroom. I would add maybe another one, no parks without lifeguards. No parks that are, too small to handle any more capacity. So say if we went through that, right? So if we had the 3 or 4, okay, what's left? So I think if we have those left, right, I say we take those out of this meeting and then we hold town halls in those areas. Because I think what was brought up, and I'm a huge proponent of having discussions in the community with the community and not here. I can barely get people from Waianae to come here, but even that, like Cal Beach Park is even farther than that. So I think reasonably, if we know that there's 20 parks left, like just hypothetical, right? Sorry, I'll add one more for Councilmember Kiaina, no parks, Hawaiian homelands, right? So if we have that as the list, right, then we're actually talking about specific beach parks and not in the ambiguity of, well, maybe this, maybe that. I think that's really what's angering people. But I also think that it would help us to have more focused conversations in our community. If I'm talking about Pu'uloa, Barbers Point Park, okay, I'm talking about 3 or 4. I gather with people in those areas. I figure out what's the gist of what's going on there. We bring it back, and then we can get into a better space with this. I guess what I'm trying to say is that I think the base of the bill is farther off than where I would like it from a community perspective. I would have preferred a community-sponsored, generated bill that had departmental input instead of the opposite, because we're trying to pull this idea too far, and it's just becoming difficult. So those are my suggestions. Whittle it down, shorter list, have the meetings in the community. Let's get another version of this bill out there so that we can progress. And I know we're going to have the photographer conversation, but then at least we can start to narrow it down so that we're not taking this omnibus bill everywhere we go. I had a hard time last night at neighborhood board because the thing's so huge, So can we narrow it? And then we can have better conversations.
Thank you. Councilmember Kiaina.
In addition to Hawaiian homelands, of course, any city parks that have current protection should be taken off the list. I would love to go to Kaneohe and take Bill 19 out and to have a robust discussion with our community out there regarding that. I cannot at this point because my priority is to protect the laws on the books for Kailua and Waimanalo. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember. Councilmember, okay. Thank you, everyone. This has been a lively discussion. Thank you, guys. Thank you to the community for coming out. We know that's a long drive, and it's a long drive back, and we appreciate you guys' hearts, and we hear you. Thank you, Director, for your presentation. Members, mahalo for attending today's meeting. There being no further business, this meeting is adjourned.